My name is Lena Morales, and I was 36 when my parents told me the rent I was paying was temporary for the 31st month in a row. The envelope was waiting on the narrow table beside their front door. It was white, unmarked, and folded once down the middle. I had come over on a Tuesday evening because Mom said Dad's knee was bothering him and she needed help changing the smoke detector battery. That was how requests entered our family, through something small enough that saying no would make you seem dramatic. I had barely set down my purse when Mom touched the envelope with 2 fingers. "Just the rent for this month," she said. "Until Dad gets back on his feet." Dad was sitting at the kitchen table in his old work shirt, looking tired in a way that made me feel guilty before I had even read the number. My younger brother, Matteo, was leaning against the counter scrolling through his phone. Nobody said what I was supposed to pay, because we all knew the routine. I opened the paper. It was a handwritten note, $1,480, due Friday. Under it, Mom had written, "Thank you for being patient." I had been patient. I had been patient through the first month, after Dad's hours were cut. I had been patient through the second month, when the rent became just until summer. I had been patient through the year, when nobody used the word temporary anymore because the word had started to feel too fragile to say out loud. The apartment was not mine. I did not live there. I had my own 1-bedroom across town, my own rent, my own work as a payroll coordinator for a non-profit hospital network. But for 30 months, I had transferred money into my parents' account while telling myself that family support was different from a bill. Mom watched my face. "We know you've done a lot," she said. "This is only because the timing is bad." The sentence landed softly, almost kindly. That was why it worked. It made a growing obligation sound like an unfortunate calendar issue instead of a pattern. I looked at Dad. "What changed since last month?" He cleared his throat. "Nothing permanent." The contractor pushed to jobs. "I just need a little room." Matteo finally looked up. "Lena, it's not like they're asking you to buy a house." No one laughed. They waited. I folded the note and put it in my bag. "I'll look at my budget tonight," I said. Dad's shoulders loosened as if I had already agreed. Mom kissed my cheek. Matteo returned to his phone. They did not know that the phrase temporary had started to bother me months earlier. I had begun saving every transfer confirmation, every text that said just this once, every message where someone promised a repayment date that never appeared again. Not because I wanted to accuse my parents, because I had begun to wonder whether the rent was the only thing I was paying. That night, I opened a blank spreadsheet and typed one word at the top, temporary. When Dad first asked for help, I did not hesitate. His warehouse had reduced his shifts after an ownership change, and Mom's hours at the salon had been inconsistent all winter. They had always worked. They had never asked me for rent before. I told myself that was why the first transfer felt simple. The amount was $620. Sent a text that night we hate asking. This is only until March. I still have the screenshot. Back then, I read it as honesty. I did not know that people can tell the truth about their fear and still build a system around your willingness to rescue them. March became April. April became an extra utility bill. Then the rent was short because the car needed tires. Then Dad said the landlord had raised the rate. Every request came with a reason that made sense on its own. None of them sounded like a decision to make me part of their household budget. I was the oldest child. That fact had been treated like a compliment all my life. I was the organized one, the dependable one, the person who read forms, checked dates, and remembered birthdays without being reminded. When helped it When I asked for clarity, they said I was making family feel transactional. By the time I was 34, I was sending a standing transfer on the first of every month. Nobody had asked me to set it up. I did it because I was tired of receiving late-night messages that made me choose between my peace and their crisis. Automatic payments seemed calmer. They also made the problem invisible. There was always a new explanation. Dad had a job interview. Mom was waiting for a busy season. Mateo was going through a separation and could not contribute much. The apartment needed to stay stable for everyone. Those words made the rent sound like a shared family need. But every time I asked who else was contributing, the conversation shifted to my income, my savings, or the fact that I did not have children. "You have more flexibility," Mom would say. What she meant was that my life had fewer witnesses. No spouse stood beside me when I opened my bank app. No child needed dinner while I debated whether I could afford to be generous. I had built a careful life, and my family had begun to treat that care as an available resource. The first time I noticed the amount changing, I thought it was a mistake. The transfer had gone from $620 to $850. Mom said the landlord had included packing. Then it became $1,100 because Dad had missed another week. I did not ask for receipts. I did not ask to see the lease. I told myself that needing proof would be cruel. But temporary things are supposed to shrink. This one kept growing. On Wednesday morning after the envelope by the door, I opened my bank history. I started with the first transfer. Then I added every payment, every utility reimbursement, every grocery delivery I had sent when Mom said the refrigerator was empty. I expected to find a few difficult months. Instead, I found a second rent payment hidden inside my own bank account. The first number that shocked me was not the total. It was the repetition. On the first of each month, my rent payment left my account and went to my landlord. On the third or fourth, another transfer left for my parents. The descriptions were ordinary: family help, mom rent, apartment, utilities. I had chosen those labels myself, probably because I thought naming the payments gently would make them easier to carry. I added everything into the spreadsheet: date, amount, purpose given, who asked, and what temporary was supposed to mean that month. A new row appeared every time I checked another statement. I found 14 payments, labeled rent, 6 labeled partial rent, 9 transfers for electricity, internet, or late fees, 3 deposits that were supposed to be returned after Dad started working full-time again. The total after 30 months was $28,430. I sat at my desk with both hands flat on the keyboard. The number was not life-changing money. That was almost the point. It was money that had disappeared in increments, small enough to rationalize. It was a used car I had not bought. It was a year of emergency savings. It was every time I had said no to a weekend away because I wanted to be responsible. I did not feel angry at first. I felt embarrassed. I kept hearing the imaginary version of my mother, "Lena, nobody forced you. You offered." And she would be right in one narrow way. Nobody had physically forced me. They had simply allowed urgency, guilt, and habit to make every choice feel like only one choice. At lunch, I called the property management company listed on the building lobby sign. I told the receptionist I was helping my parents organize their payments and asked whether the rent had changed in the last 2 years. I expected her to say that they could not tell me anything. Instead, she asked for the unit number and said, "I can confirm the current monthly rent if you're listed as a contact." I was listed as an emergency contact. That made my stomach tighten. The current rent was $1,125. I asked her to repeat it. Then I asked whether there had been a large increase. She said the rent had risen by $75 18 months earlier. There was no $1,480 monthly charge. There was no parking fee added to the lease. There was one late fee in the past year, $62.50. I thanked her and ended the call before my voice changed. When I compared the actual rent to what I had been sending, I noticed something else. Dad's bank account had received the rent money from me, but the payment portal had not always been paid from that account. There were gaps. Some months, my transfer arrived and the rent was paid days later from Mom's account. Other months, it came from a joint account I did not recognize. I did not know what the extra money was for. I only knew that temporary had stopped being a reason. It had become a label placed over a budget no one intended to show me. That afternoon, Mom texted, "Did you have a chance to think about Friday?" I stared at the message. Then I replied, "I am reviewing the rent history before I send anything." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, she wrote, "I don't understand why you are doing this. Neither did I not yet." But I knew I was done paying without understanding. Mom called before dinner. Her voice was careful, the way it became when she wanted to sound hurt, without sounding accusing. "Your father is anxious," she said. "The rent is due Friday." "I know," I told her. "Can you send me a copy of the lease?" The silence was immediate. "Why?" "Because I have been helping with the rent for 2.5 years, and I have never seen what I am paying toward." Mom sighed. "You know how much rent costs. I know what I have been sending. I do not know what the lease says. This is not a business arrangement." That sentence used to end conversations. It did not end this one. "No," I said. "It is family." That is why I wanted to be clear. Dad came on the line. He did not greet me. "Are you saying you won't help us?" "I am saying I need the documents before I decide what I can help with. We have never kept score with you." I looked at the spreadsheet. 32 rows now, because I had found 2 more utility payments from the year before. "I am not keeping score," I said. "I am checking facts." He hung up. "Anari letten message you, begin the same thing. Moi's crying wife instinct, so apologize." That instinct had trained itself well. But I read the message again and noticed what was missing. No one had asked whether I was worried. No one had asked why the rent amount was higher than the lease. The emergency was not the money. The emergency was that I had paused. At 9 that night, Mom emailed me a scanned lease. The pages were crooked, as if she had photographed them on the kitchen table. I printed them anyway. The rent was exactly what the property manager had told me, $1,125. The lease was renewed each year. There was no clause about parking, no unusual fee, and no missed balance that would explain the amount they had asked me for, but attached to the email was another document. At first, I thought it was an old application. Then I saw my name. It was a household budget worksheet from a credit counseling appointment. Dad and Mom were listed first. Mateo was listed as a contributing adult in the home. And under outside support, there was a line that said, "Daughter contribution, $1,200 recurring." Recurring, not temporary. Not help while Dad recovered. Recurring. I read the page 3 times. Someone had written my support into their household budget, as though it were income. The handwriting was Mom's, at the bottom of the page. The counselor had recommended that the household create a written contribution agreement with any family member providing regular support. There was no agreement attached. The next Morning, I began a new tab in the spreadsheet. I named it what I was told, what was written down. The first line read, temporary rent help, daughter contribution recurring. That was the moment the story changed. I was not just carrying a rent payment. I was carrying a plan I had never agreed to be part of. I drove to my parents' apartment on Thursday evening because I did not want another conversation to happen in fragments of text. I brought the lease, the budget worksheet, and a printed list of my transfers in a blue folder. I did not bring anger. I was afraid of anger. It felt too close to becoming the person they would say I had become. Mom opened the door and looked at the folder before she looked at me. Dad was at the kitchen table. Mateo was there too, holding a soda can like he had been called in as a witness. This feels hostile, Mom said. It is not hostile, I said. It is organized. I sat across from Dad and placed the lease between us. The rent is $1,125. Why was I asked for $1,480? Dad glanced at Mom. Mom stared at the counter. There are other costs, he said. Which costs? Food, gas, utilities, life. Then please tell me that. Do not call all of it rent. Mateo laughed once, without humor. You are really going to demand an itemized invoice from your parents? I turned toward him. I am asking what my money is for. Because you can afford it, he said. Because they need help. The old shame rose in me. I could feel it trying to make my voice softer. But the worksheet was still on the table. I slid it toward him. They told me this was temporary, I said. They listed it as recurring income. He read the line. His expression changed, just slightly. Then he set the paper down. Maybe they were planning ahead. Mom finally spoke. We needed stability. Your father was not working consistently. Mateo was trying to get back on his feet. We did not know how else to manage. You could have asked me for a specific amount, I said. You could have said you needed monthly support. You could have asked whether I agreed. Dad pressed his palm against the table. We did ask. Every month you sent it. You asked after the expectation was already created. That is not the same thing. For several seconds, nobody spoke. I could hear the refrigerator click on. Then Mom said the sentence I had feared. After everything we did to raise you, this is how you talk to us. I did not answer immediately. I had learned that my family moved quickly when they wanted me to react. They made the room uncomfortable, then offered me relief if I would just give in. I am grateful that you raised me, I said. I am not agreeing that gratitude means an open-ended payment. Dad looked away. Mateo shook his head. I opened the folder again. I need one number. What is the household shortfall each month after your income, Mateo's contribution, and the actual rent? Mom's eyes filled. You make us feel poor. No, I said quietly. I am asking what the plan is. They did not have an answer. That mattered more than any accusation. Before I left, I told them I would not send Friday's payment until I received a written breakdown of the household budget and a proposed end date. I said I was willing to review it. I said I was not willing to keep being surprised. Dad did not say goodbye. Outside, I sat in my car for 10 minutes with the keys in my lap. I had not solved anything. But for the first time, I had asked a question no one could answer with guilt. Friday morning arrived without a budget. At 9:12, Mom sent a text. Please, Lena, the landlord will not wait for paperwork. At 9:26, I called the property manager again. The rent was not late. The payment was scheduled from Mom's account, and it would process that afternoon. The emergency did not exist the way it had been described to me. That discovery did not make me relieved. It made me more careful. I spent the rest of the morning organizing the transfer history. I matched dates to the messages I had saved. I found the $1,100 I sent in April had been followed by a $980 transfer from Dad's account to a local auto shop. In July, when Mom said the rent had jumped, $600 went to Mateo's checking account 2 days after my payment landed. In September, a month where I paid an extra $420 for utilities. The electricity payment itself was only $188. I did not assume every transfer was wrong. I did not invent motives. I marked only what the statements could show: amount received, amount paid toward rent, amount moved elsewhere. Purpose not explained. By noon, the spreadsheet had stopped feeling like a list of sacrifices. It looked like a household system with no boundaries around my money. I called Mateo privately. I did not want to fight in the family chat. "Did Mom or Dad ask you to contribute to rent?" I asked. He was quiet for a second. "Sometimes." "How much?" "Depends. I give them cash when I can. Do you know they listed my monthly transfer as recurring income?" "You told me that." "Did you know they used part of the money I sent for your car repair?" His silence was longer this time. "I had a problem," he said. "I know. I am asking whether you knew it came from money they said was rent." Mom said it was all family money. There it was. Not cruelty. Not even deception in the dramatic sense. Something more ordinary and more dangerous. A family rule that one person's stability could become communal property without her consent. I asked him whether he had been contributing regularly. He admitted he had not. He had been staying in the apartment after his separation, sleeping on the couch, using the extra room as an office when his daughter visited. Mom said not to worry about rent because things were temporary for him too. I laughed once, but not because it was funny. Temporary had become the word that covered every adult choice, except mine. I told Mateo I was not blaming him for needing help. I was blaming the system that made my help automatic and his optional. He said I was making him feel attacked. I believed him, but I also knew discomfort was not the same thing as an attack. Before we ended the call, he said, "So what are you going to do? Let them lose the apartment?" I looked at the property manager's confirmation in my inbox. The rent was paid. The apartment was not in danger. I am going to stop paying for an emergency that is not being described honestly, I said. Then I opened a new document. At the top, I wrote, "Proposal for clear family support." The first sentence was simple. Future assistance must be voluntary, specific, documented, and time-limited. Mom asked me to come over Sunday afternoon. She said Dad had agreed to talk without paperwork. I told her I would come, but I would bring the documents, because the documents were the only reason anyone was talking at all. When I arrived, the coffee table was cleared. Dad had made coffee. Mateo was already there. For a few minutes, the scene looked normal enough to make me doubt myself. Then Dad sighed. "We do not need a. We need family." "I agree," I said. "That is why I made a budget." I placed 4 pages on the table: the lease, the transfer summary, the credit counseling worksheet, and a proposed support agreement. The agreement was not legal language. It was what is needed recruits, how long the support lasts, what happens if the amount changes. No one could claim they did not understand it. Mom looked at the pages as if they were evidence of betrayal. "You made a contract for your parents." "I made a plan," I said, because the old plan was that I paid whenever someone felt anxious. Dad said he had picked up more shifts. Mom said business at the salon was improving. Mateo said he could start paying $350 a month once his next project paid. I wrote each number down. Then I asked the question no one expected. What happens if the project does not pay? Mateo rolled his eyes. You always assume the worst. No, I said. I assume the plan should survive reality. We went line by line. Rent, utilities, groceries, phone, insurance, Dad's medicine, Mateo's contribution, Mom's income, Dad's income. I did not decide for them what to cut. I only asked them to name the costs they were asking me to cover. At first, Dad refused. Then Mom started answering. The real shortfall, after their income and a reasonable contribution from Mateo, was between $280 and $430 depending on the month, not $1,480. The room went very quiet. I showed them the monthly total I had been sending. I showed them the $28,430 over 30 months. I showed them the payments that had gone to car repairs, phone bills, and household purchases after I was told the rent was short. Mom began to cry. Dad said, "We did not steal from you. I am not saying you stole," I said. "I am saying you treated my money like it was already yours." That was the hardest sentence I had ever spoken to my father. Mateo leaned forward. "Okay, but what do you want?" "Back pay." I shook my head. "I want an end date. I want everyone contributing. I want no more automatic transfers. I want requests in writing before money is moved." Dad looked exhausted. "And if we cannot do that, then I will not pay," I said. "Not to punish you, because I cannot keep being the plan you will not name." Nobody stood up. Nobody shouted. The meeting did not end with an apology. It ended with the first honest budget my family had made in years. Mom signed the support plan with a trembling hand. Dad signed after a long pause. Mateo did not sign. He said he needed to think. That was his right. It was also the first time I understood that adults being allowed to think about their own responsibilities was not cruelty. The first of the next month came with a strange silence. For nearly 3 years, I had woken up on that date with a reminder in my phone. Transfer for Mom and Dad. I had typed it myself, probably on a day when I believed automating help would make it less emotional. This time, I deleted the reminder. I did not feel powerful. I felt sick. At 8 in the morning, Mom sent a text. "Good morning. Are you sending the rent today?" I read it twice before answering. According to the agreement, Dad and Mateo are contributing first. Please send the final budget summary after those payments are made. Her reply came quickly. This is not what we meant by the agreement. I wrote, the agreement says any request has to be specific and written. I am following it. The conversation stopped. For 4 hours, nothing happened. Then Dad called. Your mother is panicking, he said. I understand. What part of the budget is missing? Why do you talk like an accountant? Because numbers are what you are asking me for, he sighed. Mateo has not paid yet. Then the budget is not complete. He is your brother. Yes, he is also an adult living in the apartment. Dad's voice hardened. You have no idea what it is like to be responsible for a household. That sentence hurt because it was partly true. I did not have children. I did not manage an apartment with a spouse who had lost hours. But I had been responsible for a household in every way that mattered, financially. I had simply been denied the information and authority that responsibility should include. You are right, I said. I do not live there. That is why I cannot be the household's automatic income. He hung up. That afternoon, I went to work and processed payroll corrections for 6 departments. I answered emails. I ate lunch outside. I noticed the strange freedom of having a normal day, even while my family wanted me to believe I was abandoning them. At 4:43, Matteo sent me a screenshot of a transfer to Mom for $350. Then he wrote, "Happy now." I almost responded immediately. Instead, I waited. I did not want my answer to be shaped by the way he had framed it. Finally, I wrote, "I am not asking you to make me happy. I am asking everyone to carry what they can see." The rent was paid that month. Dad had picked up 2 extra weekend shifts. Mom had booked additional clients. Matteo paid his contribution. They used less money for takeout and canceled a subscription no one remembered having. None of those choices were dramatic. They were simply choices that had been delayed, while my transfer made delay possible. Mom called the next Sunday. Her voice was tired, but not angry. "We made it," she said. I did not know what to say. Part of me wanted to cry. Another part wanted to ask why they had needed my refusal to discover they could make it. "I am glad," I told her. Then she said, almost too quietly to hear, "I should not have put your contribution on that worksheet without asking." It was not a full apology, but it was the first sentence that named the real harm. I thanked her. I did not rush to make her feel better. That was new for both of us. 2 weeks later, I received a notice from a medical billing company addressed to Dad at my apartment. It had been forwarded from their old mailing address. The envelope was thin, with a red message visible through the window. Final notice. For a moment, my body reacted before my mind did. I thought, call Dad, pay it, make it disappear. That reaction had been trained into me by repetition. Then I opened the letter. The balance was $1,760 for a procedure Dad had postponed and then completed months earlier. The due date had passed. The notice said payment arrangements were available. I called Dad. I did not accuse him. I told him the letter had come to my address. Asked whether he had seen. He said she had. Then he said, "We were going to talk to you about it." I closed my eyes. "Did you use my address for the billing account?" I asked, only because mail gets lost at the apartment. "Did you put me down as a contact?" "You are family." The phrase no longer carried the same power. It was not an answer. "Please remove my address and contact information," I said, "and call them about a payment plan." He was quiet. "You are really going to leave me with this?" I wanted to say that I had left him with nothing. I had not. I had left him with options. I gave him the phone number from the letter. I explained what documents he might need. I offered to sit with him while he called, but I did not offer money. Dad did not accept the offer. He said he would handle it. The next day, Mom called furious. "Your father is embarrassed." "I understand," I said. "You could have paid it and let him keep his dignity." I held the phone between my shoulder and my ear while I washed a mug. "His dignity is not protected by pretending I agreed to pay his bills. You have become cold." I put the mug down. "No, I have become clear." We did not speak for 3 days. During that time, I kept returning to the spreadsheet. The rent story had made me see how many other obligations had entered my life through a side door. A late utility bill, a car insurance cancellation, a grocery order placed in my name, a phone account where I was listed as a backup contact. Each thing was small. Together, they described a role I had never consciously chosen. I spent Saturday changing passwords, removing my address from old forms, and canceling the automatic transfer I had forgotten existed for Mom's cell phone plan. I sent one email to both parents and Matteo. "I am reviewing all accounts connected to my name. address, or payment information. Please do not list me on future applications, billing accounts, or payment arrangements without asking me first. Mateo replied, "This is so extra." Mom replied, "Fine." Dad did not reply at all. The silence hurt, but it also gave me space to notice something important. My family had called my boundaries cold because boundaries interrupted access. They had never called my unpaid labor warm when it exhausted me. A week later, Dad texted. I called the billing office. We made a plan. I wrote back, "I'm glad." Nothing more was needed. By the time Thanksgiving approached, I considered skipping dinner. I had spent every holiday in that apartment since I was a child. Missing it would become a statement, and I was tired of statements. But going felt dangerous too. I did not know whether there would be another envelope by the door, another problem disguised as a meal. Mom invited me 2 weeks early. Her message was simple: dinner at 5. No pressure. I stared at it for several minutes. Then I wrote back, "I will come if we are not discussing money, unless everyone has agreed to talk about it." She answered, "Okay." When I arrived, the apartment looked different. Not transformed, just more deliberate. There were fewer packages by the door. Dad had repaired the loose cabinet hinge himself. Mateo's shoes were lined up in the hallway instead of scattered. Tiny things, but I noticed them because I had spent years confusing chaos with need. There was no envelope on the table. Dad was cooking turkey, which he had not done in years. Mom had made the sweet potatoes. Mateo was setting plates. For the first 20 minutes, we talked about neutral things. My work, Dad's shifts, a neighbor's dog that had escaped twice that week. Then Mom asked whether I wanted to see the new budget folder. I did not answer right away. Dad looked at her, surprised. She brought it out anyway. Inside were printed copies of the monthly plan: rent, utilities, groceries, Dad's medical payment plan, Mateo's contribution, Marm's salon income. At the bottom was a line labeled family support, only requests and agreement. I felt my throat. "We have been using it," Mom said. "Not perfectly, but we have been using it." Dad sat down across from me. "I did not understand why you needed it written down," he said. "I thought you were trying to prove we had failed." "I was trying to stop failing quietly," I said. He nodded once. It was the closest we had come to speaking the same language in months. Mateo did not apologize. Instead, he said he had found a room to rent closer to his work and would be moving out in January. Mom looked sad, but not panicked. Dad asked how much it would cost him. Mateo said he had already worked it out. I watched my brother say that. I realized I had never heard him explain a plan before. Not because he had no ability to plan, but because someone else had always softened the consequences first. After dinner, Mom asked whether I missed the old way things were. I thought about automatic transfers, late-night calls, the relief of making a problem disappear, and the resentment that followed. "I miss feeling close to you without feeling responsible for everything," I said. She looked down at her hands. "Me too." It was not a perfect dinner. It was not a neat ending. But no one put a bill in front of me. For the first time, I understood that peace was not the absence of conflict. It was a room where the truth could stay on the table without becoming a weapon. The real confrontation happened in December, not because we planned it, but because Mom invited my Aunt Rosa over for coffee, and Dad mentioned that I had stopped helping. The sentence was casual, almost harmless. But I had learned to listen for the story people tell when they want others to judge you without knowing the details. Aunt Rosa turned to me. "Is everything okay?" Mom looked away. Dad kept stirring his coffee. Old Lena would have smiled. Old Lena would have said we were fine. I did not want to expose anyone. I still did not. But I also did not want a vague version of me to become the explanation for their discomfort. I changed how I help, I said. I was paying a monthly amount that was described as temporary. When I added it up, it had become a recurring part of the household budget without an agreement, and Rosa blinked. How long? Dad said, "It is not that simple. It is complicated," I said. "But the numbers are not unclear." Mom stood up and went to get the folder. I had not expected her to do that. She placed it on the coffee table between us and opened it to the transfer summary. There it was. 30 months. $28,430. Rent, utilities, groceries, deposits. A record of the time I had spent telling myself each request was too small to matter, and Rosa did not say anything for a long time. Then she asked Dad whether he had known the total. He shook his head. "Did you know Lena was listed as recurring support in the credit counseling budget?" She asked Mom. Mom's face changed. I could see that she wanted to defend herself. Then she said yes. Did Lena agree to it? Mom looked at me. No, the word was quiet. It did not fix the past, but it was true. Dad put both hands around his mug. We thought she would understand. I had heard that phrase before. This time, I answered without shaking. Understanding is not consent, and Rosa nodded slowly. Then she said something I had not expected. People who love you can still become too comfortable with what you carry. No one cried. No one stormed out. The room was uncomfortable in the honest way. I did not enjoy it. I did not want my parents to feel ashamed. I wanted them to stop making me the place where their fear went to hide. Before Aunt Rosa left, Mom asked whether she could keep a copy of the spreadsheet. I said yes. Dad asked whether I wanted repayment. I thought about that question all night. A repayment schedule could be fair. It could also turn our relationship into another long negotiation where I became the collector instead of the daughter. I did not need to decide immediately. The next morning, I emailed them a short response. I did not ask for the whole amount back. I proposed that any repayment be voluntary, affordable, and separate from future support. I said the first priority was that they could maintain their own household without assuming my money. Dad replied, "That is fair." Those 2 words were not dramatic, but they were the beginning of a different rule in our family. In January, I sent the final version of the family support agreement. I had revised it after talking to a financial counselor through my employee assistance program. I did not ask for legal advice. I asked how to keep help from becoming resentment. The counselor said something that stayed with me. Clarity is kindness when money is involved. The agreement was 1 page. It said that no one could use my name, address, bank information, or income in a household budget, application, billing account, or payment plan without my written permission. It said requests had to include the amount, purpose, deadline, and whether repayment was expected. It said I could say no without needing to debate my character. I sent it to Mom, Dad, and Mateo with a short note. This is how I can stay connected without disappearing inside other people's emergencies. Mom called an hour later. "It sounds so formal," she said. "I know," I said. "I hate that we need this. I hate that I needed it too." We were both quiet. Then she asked whether I had written it because I did not trust them. The question hurt because I wanted to say yes. I did not trust the old system, but trust was not a single door that opened or closed forever. I wrote it because I want trust to have something to stand on, I said. She did not answer for a while. Finally, she said, I can understand that. Dad signed the agreement first. He wrote his name slowly, in the same blue ink he used on birthday cards. Mom signed next. Mateo sent a message 2 days later. Fine, I signed it. I did not respond with gratitude for the bare minimum. I simply confirmed I had received it. That month, Dad paid the rent from his own account. Mom showed me the receipt without being asked. Mateo moved into his rented room and started contributing to his own expenses. The apartment did not collapse. The family did not collapse. Our habits did. There were still awkward moments. Mom sometimes began a request with, I know we have the agreement. But Dad still looked disappointed when I said I needed time to think. Mateo occasionally made jokes about my spreadsheets, but the jokes no longer had the same effect. A boundary does not stop people from wishing you were easier to use. It stops their wish from becoming your assignment. I printed the agreement and put one copy in my filing cabinet. Then I put another copy in the folder beside the old transfer summary. The spreadsheet had begun as proof that I was not imagining the pattern. The agreement became proof that I had chosen a different one. For the first time in years, I did not dread the first day of the month. By spring, Dad's work had stabilized. He was not making more money than before, but he was working consistently. Mom had taken an extra day at the salon and learned how to track her appointments in an online calendar. Mateo had found a smaller apartment near his job and started seeing his daughter on weekends, without needing Mom to rearrange the entire household around him. None of that happened because I saved them. That was the point. I still helped sometimes. When Dad needed a ride after a procedure, I drove him. When Mom's phone broke, I helped her compare plans. When Mateo needed someone to watch his daughter for an hour during a work emergency, I said yes, because I wanted to. The difference was not what I did. The difference was that I could tell the truth about what I was choosing. One Saturday, Dad handed me an envelope after lunch. For 1 second, my entire body went tense. He noticed. It is not a bill, he said. Inside was a check for $500. The memo line said, first repayment. I looked at him. You do not have to do this if it puts you behind. It does not, he said. And I want to. He did not apologize in a speech. Dad was not built for speeches. But he had written a number down, signed his name, and given it to me without being asked. It was a language I understood. I deposited the check 2 days later. Not because $500 erased anything, because I wanted to accept a repair that was freely offered. Mom called me that evening. She said she had found an old note from the first time I helped with the electric bill years before. Dad had written, "Thank you for getting us through a tight week." She asked whether I remembered it. "I do," I said. "I think we should have kept treating it like a tight week," she said. "Not like something you owed us." The sadness in her voice was real. So was mine. "I think so too," I said. We did not rush into forgiveness. We did not call the past a misunderstanding. We let the conversation end where it was honest. When I got home, I opened the spreadsheet one last time. I had added a final column months earlier. Outcome. Most of the old rows were still blank. They could not be repaired by a formula. For the new months, I wrote something different. March, rent paid by household. April, no request. May, Dad repayment, voluntary. The words were small, but they represented a future where the rent did not keep growing because my silence no longer made growth possible. The first month that felt like mine was not the month I stopped paying. It was the month I stopped waiting for a request. I woke up on the first Saturday in June without checking my phone. There was no reminder, no late-night message, no envelope by the door. I Coffee opened my banking app and saw that my account was exactly where I expected it to be. That should not have felt extraordinary, but after years of being prepared for someone else's emergency, ordinary felt almost unfamiliar. I took a weekend trip to a nearby lake with a friend from work. Nothing expensive. A small cabin, 2 books, a trail that led down to the water. I had postponed that trip twice before because Mom's rent needed help. This time, I booked it without explaining myself to anyone. On Saturday afternoon, Dad texted, "Hope you are having a good weekend." I looked at the lake for a while before replying, "I am. Hope you are too." He sent back a photo of Mom standing on the apartment balcony with a new herb planter. It was an ordinary picture. That was why I liked it. No hidden request. No sentence asking me to fix something. Just a small piece of their life that did not require me to fund it. I know stories like mine often want a bigger ending. They want someone exposed, a room silenced, a family forced to admit everything in front of strangers. My ending was quieter. I learned that temporary can be a useful word when it comes with a date, an amount, and a plan. Without those things, temporary can become a way of asking someone to live inside your uncertainty forever. I learned that helping family is not the problem. Being assigned the role of help without consent is the problem. And I learned that adding it up was not an act of betrayal. It was the first act of respect I had offered myself in a long time. I still have the spreadsheet. I do not open it often. I do not need to. The numbers did their job. They showed me that I had not been overreacting. They showed my parents that love could not be measured by how quietly I absorbed a cost. Sometimes Mom still says, "We are family," when she wants me to agree with her. Now I can say, yes, that is why we can be honest. The rent did not disappear. The bills did not disappear. But the expectation that I would carry them without being asked did. And for the first time, the first of the month belonged to me.